My question for all of you tonight is, have you ever been in that place where you're completely in the dark and there's no roadmap? It's that place where you know that you're the only one who can find the answer, and the only way through it is to find out yourself. And if you've been there, maybe you know that it's a feeling of being deeply alone, because everything outside of you and all of those great counsels that you can get from friends and family and maybe therapists, Dr. Phil, Glamour Magazine, things on Facebook, we have so many sources. And even some of our practices that keep us well can only take us so far. So it's that point that I'm talking about when you're there and you know that you have to move forward at some kind of crossroad in your life. And maybe you've been the type of woman who has made choices that are good, are healthy, are, in your own mind, they're the choices that have helped to support you in some way or another. Or maybe there's been circumstances that were completely out of your control. Maybe a divorce, maybe a miscarriage, maybe you've lost someone you love. And there's a healing process that happens through that. And sometimes you just don't know the way through. So I believe that we all have some point in our lives where we come to that point, right? We come to that point where we really need to face the truth in ourselves. And life somehow designs these circumstances perfectly so that we can move through them. And I believe that it takes being connected to our internal GPS to find the way forward. And I believe that our bodies are the wires that connect us to the internal GPS so that we can connect to our life force, and that illuminates our way forward. So I want to take you all in to a little journey tonight. And that journey is coming from that place where you're really in the dark. You just don't know. To that place where you have an opening, where you can really trust yourself, and you get that opening of being able to embody your truth, your deepest truth, and a lot of possibility. So I have noticed in my own life, and that I believe is a problem in our society, is that with all the passion that there is with evolution, we've come really far as women, and there's a lot of passion on how to live the best lives that we can. We have a lot of choices. We choose our work, we choose our partners, we choose how we want to serve some way in the world. We have those choices. But somewhere with all this massive information, it's really easy to get lost. And I have felt in my own life, and I know this to be true, that in that place of being lost, we forget what a privilege it is just to be alive and to have the choice as a human being, to be a human being and make conscious choices. So I want to share a literal moment in my life where I was at a crossroad, and I was literally in the dark without a roadmap. I was driving on a coastal road in California, and I was coming back from a wedding. My husband was in the passenger seat, and we came to a fork in the road. And in this area that we're in, there was no GPS reception, no reception for our phones, and we didn't have a roadmap. And I didn't know which way to turn, left or right, and I asked him, which way do you think I should turn? And he said, I don't know, but whatever you do, don't slow down in the middle of the road. Don't slow down. So I felt this kind of shaking inside of me because I didn't know how to trust my gut instinct. It was completely disconnected. And meanwhile, I was getting this pressure from him. And this situation illustrated the dynamic of what was happening between us. That week, we had decided to have a baby. And Well, everything in my brain was saying, yeah, this is logical, this is the 6th year that we've been together. I'm 37 years old, I was at the time, and my biological clock is ticking. We love each other. We want a baby. And every bone in my body was saying no. And my wires were crossed. I didn't know which part of myself to trust. And more than the fear of losing the relationship if it wasn't the right person for me, it was that fear of, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And I have lost myself. So after my divorce, let's just cut to that. I could tell you many stories in between. But after that, I was in a Gestalt therapy session. And my therapist was leading me through, hey, welcome. And my therapist was, give you a chance to get settled. My therapist was leading me through talking to my body. And he was saying, now check in with yourself, and where do you feel tension in your body? And I was feeling like a burning, searing knife in my shoulder. And I said, well, I feel this piercing pain in my shoulder. And he said, well, what's it saying to you? And I was like, it hurts, I don't know what it's saying. And he said, just, take a moment, close your eyes, and tell me, what is it saying to you? And so I started crying, and I said, I'm just really afraid of making a mistake. So this was living kind of unconsciously in my body. And I was fascinated by this way of being able to communicate with my body and to understand, wow, I can understand the thoughts that I'm sending through the wires in my body. And that was a big breakthrough. And I also gained a kind of compassion for myself because I had the space to feel, but there was something missing. And that something that was missing was, I felt like, well, you know what? I could do this forever, right? I could show up here and talk to these various parts of my body and feel the pain and release the pain and feel more open. But what's after that? And right at that time, just as things sometimes happen in life, this was a real kind of synchronicity. A friend of mine invited me into a sensual, moving meditation class. And I loved dance, so that was on. And I was very into meditation, so that was on. And I said, yeah, I know I need to do this. I need to connect with my body in that way. And so I looked up the address, went to the class, and it was a dark room with about maybe 8 women in there. And there were red lights in the corners. And our teacher was lying in the middle of the floor, and we were all on yoga mats around her. And she guided us through movements of touch as we listened to the music and we had our eyes closed. So it was this real sense of communion with other women, but also we all had our eyes closed. So it was a real privacy that we each had with ourselves. And it felt like the music was so loud that you could feel it vibrating on your pores, on your skin. And she would say things like, now listen to the grind of the guitar and move your hips. And then she'd say, and if your thigh feels like it needs a squeeze, go ahead and give it a yank. So going through all of this, and I was like, I'm letting it go. By this time, after Gestalt therapy, it's like tears are flowing. I'm like, oh my God, this is my body. And I was seeing how my hands were drawn to certain parts, like my neck. And I would massage my neck, and I would feel through that sensual touch that I also felt was highly erotic, but more than that, it was healing all of the times that I held back in my life and I hadn't spoken up. And constantly over-compromised in, for example, in my relationship with my ex-husband, I often would be the overgiver. I was the one who was driving the bus, I'll take care of the bills, I'll do this, I'll do that, and would never ask for what I needed. So this was like, wow, I was like shedding all these layers, and this is great. And then another amazing thing happened, and I learned through this kind of process of connecting with my body when I felt anger. I had an outlet finally to embody it and express it. Whereas before, when I felt anger, I would hold it in and then turn it against myself and criticize myself. So here was this opening that was the ultimate alchemy of me transforming my own energy and the information that was flowing through the wires in my body. As I was listening to Rakim, I don't know if you know Rakim, but he's my favorite hip-hop artist. And the sound of his voice, it gets me like here, here, and here. And I would just, when I felt that rage of all of the times that I hadn't expressed myself, both vocally and sexually, I just, gave myself permission to live it and be alive in it. So I want to share a couple of statistics with you because it's going to put it in perspective, not just for my story, but in the bigger picture. There have been several statistics that are done that show that we have a much greater threshold as human beings for suffering than we do for joy in our society. And I know that was certainly true for me. I would feel anxiety, and that's the point, those little, if you take a moment now and think maybe there is one area in your life that feels like a little, I'm not going to look at it. I'm just go over here and be happy, Over here, no, I don't need to look at that now. So this is what I realized. And I also learned from my own experience that after I became in touch with my body, I experienced for the first time loving myself while I was making love to my partner. And if you can imagine after 39 years of not experiencing that, it's amazing because I feel like I can really connect and own with what I want and need and express it and claim it and live it in my body. And statistics have shown that about 25% of women rarely orgasm during intercourse. I was one of those women. And there are 33 studies to support that statistic. And this is regardless of how the women felt about their partners or about their relationship. And it was regardless of the penis size as well as their partner. This was all included in the stats. So I was one of those 25. And then as I started to have this conversation, I learned that I'm actually multi-orgasmic. And it was incredible to learn that. It was a huge gift that I never could have imagined I could even experience in my own body. So that's my story. And I want to share with you the 3 keys that illuminated everything for me. And the first one was the art of observation. And by that, I mean the observation of sensation. If you reflect on any day in your life, most of the sensory comes in through vision, right? 80% comes in through vision. That means the other 20% comes in through our other senses. And there's something that happens when we close our eyes and focus on a sensation in our body where we're not taking in information, but it helps us to connect to what's happening inside ourselves. So I want to do a little experiment right now, if you all close your eyes. And put your left hand in front of you, or just to your side. And then with your right hand, with either your index finger or the middle finger, just draw a circle around the perimeter of your palm of your left hand and go very slowly. and feel all of the nuances from one sensation to the next. And just notice how they're different. And then notice if that sensation connects with any other area in your body. I know there are a couple of places for me that it connects with. I love to watch you do this. It's amazing. Does anybody want to share what they're experiencing as they trace the edges of their palm?
It's funny, I feel like in the back of my throat, it's tingling and different tingling sensations between the fingers, like between the base of the fingers. It's like different, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Slightly different tingling.
Mm.
It's funny, there's just like this wave in my throat at the same time.
Mm.
Sensation.
And can you imagine if you weren't focused on that specific part of your hand, or if your eyes were open, do you think you would notice the same sensations connected? Yeah. This is what I learned when I was in my classes, is that when I used my mind to focus specifically on sensations and let my thoughts go, it's like a yoga class, but it's a different focus. You're focusing on that sensation. So it allows for your mind to practice non-judgment. And that was a real key for me when I was going through opening up in these classes. And the next key for me was, give yourself permission to feel. Have that safe place, whether it's a class like the one I went to, or whether it's even just in your bathtub, when you're giving yourself touch and closing your eyes. And if you feel tension somewhere in your body, then just let your hand rest there and just notice and see what happens. And see if anything comes up emotionally, just let it come out. Because that is what creates the space inside to access what we're really full of, that deeper truth. There's a psychologist, which some of you probably have heard of. His name is Carl Jung. And he's done some amazing research on human beings. But he has a quote that I love. And he says that enlightenment is not looking at light or imagining figures of light outside of you. It's really bringing what's in the dark into the light. So as you allow yourself to feel, you actually shed layers and you're able to uncover the light that's underneath and see whatever is in the way of that. For me, I had this pain in my shoulder that was, I'm so afraid of making a mistake. And once I could see it, I could make a conscious choice outside of that, especially in my body. And the last key that I want to share is to remind yourself that you deserve to receive pleasure. You deserve to receive pleasure. That became my mantra in life and in, these moments of having communion with myself or whatever it was, because it's often just so overlooked. And I know that we all have such busy lives, and it's so easy to think, well, I don't have time for this. But it's so simple. You can be sitting on the subway and dragging the tip of your tongue along the roof of your mouth and feeling the ridges with your eyes closed. And that gives you connection, and it lets you know yourself and know your body. And when you know yourself, you're free, right? It's so freeing. So to close, I want to share my wish with you. My wish is for all women to learn to build trust in ourselves and to learn to trust the wiring in our bodies that heals us with its own intelligence. And it's my wish that our bodies are porous enough and open enough that we can shed those layers of self-doubt, self-betrayal, self-judgment, and shame. And it's my wish that with the loving touch and the grace of our own hands, that we ordain our bodies as vessels that are born for pleasure. And I want to invite you tonight to come home to yourselves, to the soft and supple nature of your own flesh and blood. I want to invite you to feel your guts, your skin, your bliss, your aversions, your desires, and to give yourself permission to feel, to know, and to claim your sensuality as it plugs into this electrical socket of your life force, and let that be your roadmap. Let that be your roadmap and the direct highway for embodying your deepest truth and possibility. And when you have that wisdom, then move a step forward and give yourselves permission to venture into the uncharted territories of your physical, emotional, and spiritual landscape, trusting that that internal GPS is beeping, which is connected to the wiring of your body, will effortlessly show you the way in the dark. And let the choice of giving yourself permission be a reminder that you're alive. Thank you so much.